Hello, everyone. We are back with a new episode of With Love Soleil, and I'm going to start off with a blanket apology that it has taken me this long to put out a new video. It's been about a year and some change. It wasn't my plan, but I think kind of reflecting on it, a lot of the way that my life works is that I'll kind of like Dora the Explorer, like go out into the world and gain the experiences that I then bring back to kind of my teachings or what I talk about or what I offer to you all. And that's kind of in all of my platforms, obviously. But here especially because I think one of the most important codes to me that I bring to the world is embodiment, and meaning that anything that I talk about, I've either already lived out or am living out or am actively working through myself, because I feel like the shift in leaders of the new paradigm are going to be people who have lived out their own teachings. And so anything that they talk about is just really from lived experience, kind of true wisdom. I think we've kind of shifted out of the guru culture vibe of spiritual teachers sort of being somewhere else out of society and potentially speaking from experience, but not necessarily integrated in society in a real way. And I think there's many of us right now who are trying to kind of break that code into like, we're doing the thing, we're living the life, we're very much in this human reality, living our human realities. And that we're sharing with each other what we learn along the way. So that's my long-winded apology. Forgive me. We're back, baby. Hopefully, I will be posting once a week. That is my plan. I hate to overcommit, but I think we should be good there. So, yeah, today what I wanted to talk about and what is present for me is actually something I was talking about with one of my girlfriends yesterday, Jasmine. Shout out to Jasmine. And that is that, we both agree, and I think many of us are kind of on this vibe where if it's not a hell yes, it's a no, meaning that if we get offered to do something or whatever it is, if it doesn't feel like a resounding yes in our spirit, then it's a no. And there's nuance there, obviously. For me, it's more of kind of like if it's not a hell yes, it's like a maybe. Sometimes a no, but I still will kind of maybe it because you never know how things will change. But that I'm not going to say yes unless it's a hell yes. And we were discussing this, and I think a super important piece of this, because I think that is a massive reclamation over your own life, because it's easy to say yes to things that you really want to say no to, or say yes to things that should be kind of a maybe, or that don't necessarily deserve your energy, presence, attention, or anything else. And so the mastery is learning what does, what's going to reciprocate you, what feels good to your spirit. And it really helps with discernment, right? Because even so much so that sometimes if you're just in a good mood and someone asks you to do something from that mood space, you're like, yeah, let's do that. And then the next day you're like, God, why did I say yes to that? It was literally just because you were in a good mood the day before, but it wasn't maybe a hell yes. It just felt like from your kind of state of excitement that you could say yes to this as something you might potentially want to do, which then should be maybe kind of like more like a maybe, right? But we're working that out, and it's okay. Sometimes you end up doing things you don't necessarily feel like doing. And of course, you gain benefit from most things, if even just the understanding of how to say yes when you need to say yes and no when you need to say no. But for me in my life right now, there's very few things that I do ever that I don't want to do. And I love that about my life. And it feels like such a reclamation of my own life. All of my work is stuff that I feel excited about doing. My client work, I'm expanding out in various ways. If many of you have seen that I've just launched a product line, herbal product line, Soulful Remedies. But it's all stuff I want to do. It's all stuff that feels so good to me. There's very rarely something I like leave my house dreading doing. And so that comes back to this kind of, if it's not a hell yes, it's a maybe or a no, right? But the key to this is that sometimes in the moment, it is a hell yes. And even the next day and the next day. And so the days leading up to something, it is that. And what we have to remember is that essentially what that means is that, yes, absolutely, this is the experience you need right now. And so sometimes then you get into the experience. So maybe it's a relationship even, or something that you're kind of committing to, if you will. And again, leading up to it, it's a consistent hard yes for you. And then you get there and it still feels like a hard yes until time goes on and things change, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's so important to remember that our discernment is reading the energy of right now. And so that means that something can be a big yes for you right now and tomorrow and the next day and the days leading up to whatever the thing is, or in the midst of, say, you integrating your life with another person or into a relationship. And it doesn't mean your discernment abandoned you because later down the line, it's no longer a yes anymore. It just means that the absolute yes was absolutely yes. This is the experience that your spirit wants or needs in this moment or for this amount of time. And then things will change because as you've gained that experience, your energetics have changed, your vibration has raised, the way that you see the world has changed. And that's not good or bad. And it doesn't mean that you were wrong for saying yes or feeling absolutely yes at the time. So I feel like that's such a major code. And ultimately, like the foundation of all of this, obviously, is non-attachment, because it just means that you're so connected to your own discernment that things can change. And they will. Like, changes what happened, changes the nature of reality. So it's pretty much never not going to change. Nothing is never not going to change. Change is the one constant. And that means that your read or your discernment around something is also going to change. And so the work then is to master your discernment, that you lean in it so completely that even if something, say a relationship, right, we'll go there. If a relationship is a hard yes for time and you're in it and it feels like that 100%, you're checking in regularly, it still feels like a hard yes. And then over time, there's some days where you're like, I'm not really sure, or I don't really like that they do this thing and it's pretty, present, and I didn't realize that they did that. So there's some days that are kind of like and most days are still a yes. And then over time, maybe it's 50-50. There's days that you're like, and the most, the other 50% of the time, it still feels like a clear yes. And that's how it goes, especially when you're committing to something long term. And I would imagine a relationship, especially something like a marriage, I can't speak from experience, but I would imagine something like a marriage, there's plenty of times where you feel like, what have I done? Like, well, what am I doing here? Like, is this what I really signed up for? Is this really it for me? That there's a healthy questioning, frankly, in anything that you commit to, and especially anything you commit to long term. And particularly for those of us who live our lives on the growth edge, because the growth edge is going to always push you into more, into more, into more. And so anything you've committed to long term needs to be able to match your growth patterns. And if it's not, or if it can't sustain your growth, then over time, it'll go from a hard yes to like, no, definitely a hard no. And eventually it'll either vibrate out of your reality or you're going to have to dissolve it out of your reality because it can no longer sustain what you need out of the things that you're committing your energy to consistently. So I say all this to say, there's two major themes I would say here: non-attachment and discernment, and trusting your discernment and not feeling like your discernment abandoned you because at one point it felt so clear and you're getting all the signs and it was such a hard yes. And then a year later, it's all blowing up, whatever it might be. If you start a business, if you get into a relationship, and anything where you've kind of like committed yourself to in a longer term way, or even shorter term, doesn't matter. Not even that you had to commit yourself to it. It could be a friendship. You could meet someone, a girlfriend, and you're like, man, I really resonate with her. I love hanging out with her, and that can happen for time. And then over time, things shift and change, especially when you are one who's committed to your own growth, because most people are not. Just plain and simply. And that doesn't even mean that you can't grow and they won't, and that still won't even somehow be a match. But sometimes it won't. As you grow, it'll be like they either need you to be the person that they originally knew, or your growth is going to kind of trigger them because they're not also growing, or whatever it is. There's often incompatibilities when you're growing and they're not, but that's not always the case. I have my OG friends that I've known forever, and they're on very different paths than me, and it doesn't make it wrong or right. And we've been able to sustain each other in the way that we have, and we ebb and flow together, and it's really beautiful. So the key here, and what I'm trying to say, is that don't get down on yourself when you feel like a hard yes to something consistently for time, and then it changes. Because if I would be more suspicious of something if that never changed, and not to say that maybe there are things that are just going to be a hard yes consistently. For me, for example, it's my mission. However, my mission has taken many forms in many different ways forever, literally. The kind of core thread of my mission, and it was really kind of gifted to me from my mom, who was also hers, is to facilitate the awakening of humanity. But that looks 100 different ways on 100 different days. And how I bring my work to the world looks 100 different ways on 100 different days. And, my kind of toolkit of like the work that I do in the world is always being added to and sometimes subtracted from. And I have no attachment to that because I know what it feels like to know that I'm in my sort of divine mandate and how to get back to that when I feel like I've left it or I'm not honoring it in some way. So all of this is about discernment. An example I want to give is sometimes for people who get psychic readings, I personally don't do that as much anymore. That's just my personal thing. I have nothing against them at all. I have plenty of friends who read tarot and do readings and all of that stuff. But the problem that I hear from people who do them regularly is they attach themselves to whatever they've heard in the reading. So if the reading says, yeah, this is your person, like this is your guy. And, and then women will just run with that and they will hold on to that for so long and beyond when the milk is sour. And what's happening in any kind of reading is really they're just reading your energy of today. And that's what you have to remember. And that's why it like can feel so confirming for you because you needed someone to tell you what you knew in that moment. But the thing is, things change as we've discussed, which means that even by the time you leave your reading, you will be in a little bit of a different vibrational state. Your trajectory will be a little bit different. And so if you get the reading, leave the reading, go have lunch and come back for another reading, it could literally be that in like that small amount of time, things will have changed. So there could be a little bit nuanced difference in the information that's coming through in your reading, which is to say that anything, and even the confirmations that you're getting and the hard yeses, or somebody confirms something for you, or all of the signs, it's confirming the energy of the moment. And it's beautiful when that stays consistent, when that moment, the next day you feel the same way, you're getting the same signs, and 6 months later you're getting the same signs, or you just feel that resounding yes in your spirit for time. And also sometimes that changes. And sometimes you're meant to bring something into the world or connect with someone for time and love them deeply, but not forever. I think we have this like fairy tale ideal of forever that was probably gifted to us by Disney and other kind of fairy tale whimsical things about like love and life. And maybe forever is sort of a stifling concept, actually, and especially when you're committed to your own growth. Because I know what I see often in, say, marriages is that people settle. And they kind of tap out of their growth at the level at which they've called in their partner, and then they kind of settle there. I think that the new wave of divine unions that I've seen in like my friend group, they're not doing that at all. They're like equal, they're like growth partners, and they can support and sustain each other's growth. And I think that's so key and important, because why are we tapping out of our evolution in like finding a partner? That seems contrary to what you'd want to do, and contrary to divine union, frankly, because divine union to me is both people in their fullest expression and continuously so. And so if you're in your fullest expression today, and that's where you meet your partner, and then you just stay at that version of yourself, you're not growing anymore. You're not evolving. It's like you've just kind of committed to that version of yourself who committed to this person, and you're going to stay there. And so I say all that to say, whether you're into getting readings or you're just a master of your own discernment, or you feel and see and are connected to the signs and synchronicities of your reality, it's super important to let them change. And it can feel, and so there's a component of this that's also just a kind of a commitment to the unknown, because even when it feels so clear, like this is such a big yes in my spirit, whatever it is, relationship, business, X, Y, and Z, let it be that. But also give that like room for change and for mystery and for the unknown to work, because oftentimes it's that you need this experience. Absolutely. And that's why it feels so clear in your spirit, because your spirit and the one who sees knows that this experience, person, business opportunity, X, Y, and Z is going to be like the level up that you need to get where you're going, but they're not meant to stay on the path. Some people are, some things are absolutely 100%, and some things are not. And so if you just let what remains remain, not attached to this thing being the thing, and I say that understanding that marriage will get tricky in this way, right? I mean, I grapple with marriage at times because of everything I've just said, basically, And so I'll leave that topic for another day because I feel like that's sort of an offshoot of tangent of what we're talking about here. But all in all, it's master discernment of what you say yes to, where you're saying yes from, why you're saying yes, and remembering and memorizing the energy of what it feels like to just be such a crystal clear yes, that it's as if this thing is already written for you. You've just found it. And when you feel that way about something, it's like you couldn't say no if you wanted to, right? And over time, that can change. So let things change, release attachment, master your discernment and lean into it. Lean your head on your discernment, knowing that if it's a yes today and a no tomorrow, there's information for you there. If the signs are just everywhere about something and you just feel so clear and you're madly in love with whatever the thing is, be madly in love with it. Be even more in love with it, knowing that the energetics around it might change, but if nothing else, for right now, it's giving you that experience of being madly in love with something. And what better experience would anybody want to have than just being madly in love? And it almost, to me, makes you love deeper when you know that the ending is possible. And that it's not like forever is kind of a fable and not something you want to attach yourself to because it ends up being a ball and chain sometimes. And that you just like, all I know is that today this feels so absolutely magical. And I just want to saturate myself in this experience so that I can call in more of these experiences, or I can feed this thing that's giving me this experience so that I can stay in this energy for as long as I can. Because it's also true that feeling that kind of energy calls in more of that, right? That's law of attraction, law of assumption. Being in the energetics of just absolute bliss calls in more things that are going to bring you absolute bliss. And it feeds the thing that's giving you absolute bliss. So in essence, it's unattaching the thing from the feeling that you have about the thing. The feeling is your own. Now, there's only few things in life that are going to bring you that absolute saturated, absolute bliss, people or experiences or whatever. It's not like often, right? That's why it's like, oh my God, this feels so good. I want to attach to this thing forever because I want this feeling forever. So what you're not wanting to necessarily attach to the thing, you're attaching to the feeling, which means that the mastery is to saturate yourself in that feeling so much so that even if the thing ends, you can just sit in that energy and remember how good it feels and call that down at any point when you don't have anything to attach it to even, and just be in that energy because it's yours. All the thing has done is help you remember how good it feels to feel that way. And you have the permission to feel that way no matter what, whether that person, thing, or X, Y, and Z is in your reality still or not. It wasn't up to them. It was your willingness to feel that experience and to remember what it feels like, and then to be able to call that forward whenever you want to. So that's what I've got for you guys today. I'm super excited to be back. I'm really glad. Please always let me know if there's topics you want me to touch on. All the things. Also, as I mentioned, I just launched a product line. I don't have any of my products next to me, but Soulful Remedies, I have it in my bio and on all of my socials. It is an herbal product line. I have literally been absolutely loving it myself. We have creams and herbal supplements and aura sprays, and actually much more coming on the way. I haven't told anybody else that. So check it out. Let me know what you think. And yeah, thank you guys for being patient with me. Thank you for consistently nudging me over the past year and some change to get back on here. We're back, baby. Let's go.